stuff like that.
Yeah.
You want me to start talking now?
Yeah.
Uh, I was born on the ranch in July the 10th, 1914. That makes me 75 this July.
Right.
And the ranch was 18 miles from Bay City. And of course, in those days, there were no roads. It took about a half a day to get from the ranch to Bay City. Had to go to Wadsworth first and then go to Bay City, and the roads were just ruts if it rained. And if we were lucky, we went once a month or something like that. And anyone that had news from what was going on in the world, well, they had to go meet the train at Bay City. It came in at noon from Houston, and the papers would be on that, and they'd sometimes horseback ride or go in a Model T to find out what was going on.
Well, who were your parents? What was the family like when you were born into it?
My mother was German, and my father was, English and Scotch and Irish. And they came from, the Culvers had come over in 1836. They were Puritans. And oddly enough, I think a lot of that has come down almost to this day. It is remarkable thinking about how my father didn't believe in drinking or dances or anything like that, and still he didn't, I don't think he was aware of the Puritanism background, but it seemed that they were very, I don't know, we just never went to anything like that. Of course, I was just a child, and then my mother died when I was 4.
Wow, how did that? Do you remember her at all? I mean,
Yes, I sure do. I remember her being very loving, and then after that, it seemed like it was just like a gray cloud descended over everything. Everything from then on was gray, and she was pregnant, and they were expecting a baby shortly, and she got the flu and died on the 20th of, in 1918, 20th of October. And I remember that everybody came and cried and all that, but no one took me home with them. My father was by himself on the ranch with just black people. We had a lot of, but they weren't families. They were just the men that came in and stayed for a week and then went home on weekends to their families. They had 2 camp houses for the cowboys.
wow.
And one in the fall, the herd was moved from the ranch to about 18 or 20 miles further to a place called Sargent for wiregrass. In the spring, this grass was burned off, and it came out nice and for cattle to herd on during the winter, and they were moved down there. And the black man had a violin, and he'd play that, and I was 4 years old. He did take me with him in the buggy behind the camp wagon. The camp wagon always went before the herd because the camp cook had to have meal cooked by, I think it's around 10 or 11, because they ate awfully early in the morning, around 10 or 11. And I think that was one of the first times I ever got interested in cooking, was way back, was watching the marvelous way they could build a fire and cook in these big black pots with coals on top and coals underneath, and bake biscuits and all of that. And of course, it was altogether a different way of eating too in those days. You had dried fruit, and they butchered a calf, and what they didn't eat that day, they would salt down with a whole lot of salt, put it in a barrel. And the camp wagon had a barrel on the side that held water, and an axe, and of course the food box on the back that opened out, it was slanted, and the lid came down and made a table. And they made biscuits and had dried fruit and beans. That was beans every day. And there weren't many things like fresh vegetables unless they happened to be by somebody that had cabbage. But in the fall, there wasn't anyone that had much in the line of fresh vegetables, lettuce and all that stuff like we have now was just unheard of. You just didn't have anything like that.
So everything was canned, or everything was. What
We'd buy cases of dried fruit. It came in 25-pound boxes, I believe, and it came from a place called Hinky and Pilot or Hinky and Pilot
You got.
out of Houston. They would be shipped into Wadsworth, and they would go with a wagon to pick up the sugar. I think it came in barrels.
All right, go ahead, and we'll just stop talking about the cooking and the camping out and all the cooks that they would have along.
Well, they would just have one cook, but he had to, and then he had to get up about 2 o'clock in the morning to get food ready for him to eat at.
Was it a working ranch?
Yes.
And y'all had cattle and all that? Were you a tomboy?
No.
What was your place on the ranch?
Nothing. My daddy wouldn't let me do anything. He was scared to death after I lost my mother, and I never learned to ride a horse or anything.
So you were really overprotective.
Yes.
You the only girl?
I was only child.
My goodness.
And see, the baby was, I don't know how they knew, but it was always said it was a boy, and I don't know whether it was that well developed or what, but then he hired a private teacher to come and teach me, and by that time, aunt and uncle of mine had moved on the ranch to kind of halfway look after me and help with the ranch work too, and he hired a private teacher. There was 2 little boys and myself, and she stayed there for several years, and then I went home with her. Her parents got sick, or her father got sick, and she went home to Bryan. They had Buckman's Business College, which is quite an unusual thing back in the early 20s. And I stayed there, and then I was raised here at the convent from then on.
Well, all right, but let's take it kind of in steps. So you were how old when you left the ranch?
About 7.
Okay.
When I was in Bryan, I had a ruptured appendix, and luckily I was in Bryan, and I was operated on Christmas Day, and they saved me. I was in the hospital forever, it seemed like.
Oh, for a 7-year-old, it really is.
It seemed like. And then after that, I was raised here at the convent. I went home twice a year at Christmas and in summer, and we'd go down to Bloomington and catch the train and get off at Bay City. There was what they call a jitney, would take a bunch of us to Bloomington.
Yeah.
There were quite a few girls at the convent at that time. And
how old were you when you went to the convent?
I was 8 when I went to the convent.
You were 8? Okay.
And then I was there until I graduated.
Well, did you enjoy being with the other girls?
Oh, yes. It was just heaven to be with. It's the first time I'd ever been with other children. There weren't even any black children on the ranch to play with. Of course, I had my 2 little boy cousins, and we had, but I remember so much about, I think about it yet, that there's just a whole gray area, a whole gray
Sure.
dead period. There wasn't any fun, there wasn't anything, there wasn't any place to go. And I came up here one Christmas to stay with some friends by the name of Gilly, lived down below us down here, and I met Jim. And
how old were you then?
I was 18.
Okay, you're going too fast. All right, so you gotta stop.
Yes, I'm already getting married, huh?
Exactly. So let's get back to your. All right, so the convent. What kind of things?
Well, let me get back to right after my mother died.
Yeah.
We went to. My daddy would go to the cemetery ever so often, and we had a Model T, and it was cold and very cold and raining, and of course you always took blankets and things to wrap up in the old Model T, because it had these old cloth curtains or whatever with isinglass in them, and usually the isinglass cracked and broke, you know. And he bought me a cup and saucer down at Matagorda, where the cemetery was. It's a very old cemetery down there. And we were coming home, and it was dark, and the rice fields were beside the little old sandy road, and the owners would turn the water out on the road, and it would just make a quagmire there. So then every once in a while, one of them would come along with a load of rice straw, dump it in the worst quagmire. So anyhow, we were coming along there, and the car bogged down, and in attempting to start it, the straw caught on fire and burned the car up.
Oh no, out in the middle of nowhere?
Out in the middle of nowhere. It was nothing out there, just miles and miles from nowhere. And of course the gas tank in the old Model Ts was under the front seat. You had to lift up the padded seat and take a ruler and stick it down in there and see how much gas was in there. Well, my daddy was able to get me out with a blanket or quilt or something and run to a little higher spot further down the road before it exploded and burned up.
Oh my God, what an adventure.
So the cup and saucer were very burnt. I had them for years, but I don't know whatever became of it finally. And then some niggers came along in a wagon. They picked us up, and we drove the 7 miles to the ranch then. But I think I was scared of fire forever after that, because one night in a storm, one of the camp houses where the niggers slept, there were 2 of them, caught on fire. It was struck by lightning, caught on fire. And I remember my horror and thinking that somebody had been burned up, but they weren't. They had great big, well, kind of like shutters. They weren't windows. They just a big old shutter that pulled to at night. Man, that was right on the ground almost. So they jumped out. They were able to get out. But it's just one of the. I guess I was thinking back. I guess I was overprotected, because he was scared to death he was going to lose me after he lost his wife.
Now, let's just for the record get your mother's name and her maiden name and your father's name and his.
All right. Her name was Anna Mary Behmer, Behmer. Okay. She was German.
Okay. And your father?
George David Culver, Culver.
Okay. And what is your full name?
Anna Elizabeth.
Anna Elizabeth. And who were you named for? Or do you
my 2 aunt, my mother and my aunt. I had an aunt Elizabeth, and I was named for Anna for my mother. I've been known for Ann forever, but my name is actually Anna on the baptismal certificate.
Okay, so now let's take you to the convent. All right. So did you start going formal school then? I mean, it was a regular.
Yes, that was the first time I ever had first classes, and they brought me up from Bay City in the old. I guess it was still a Model T, because that was in the 20s, and it was an all-day trip, because it wasn't any concrete between. We had to go to Wharton from the ranch. We went to Wadsworth, then up to Bay City, and then up to Wharton, and there wasn't any concrete road in those days. Sometime in the 20s I think, if I remember right, half of the road was paved, and the other half was left, because you didn't meet 3 cars between here and Bay City.
That's wild. Half the road, huh?
Yes. And then it was later they came along and did the other half. But before the paving was even put there, the road would cross the railroad track for a few miles, and then come back again. Whichever landowner on which side, and then maybe it'd be the one on the left side, and then the right side. The road crossed the railroad track, dozens of times between here and Wharton. And then, of course, when they got to over there by Edna, there'd been a huge rain, and I don't know how long. The different cars that were there were helping each other to try to get across that big old wooden bridge, plank bridge, and finally we got into Victoria about I think it's around 4 o'clock or something like that.
Well, now Victoria was certainly not. Of course, it wasn't spread out, all right. It was all built around this little downtown area.
Yeah,
right? And that was Victoria.
That's right.
Still a pretty classy little town.
Oh yes, it was compared to Bay City, it was quite a metropolis. And I had never been to any town to speak of except Houston on the train, and then up to Bryan, and it was it was a nice little town. That was downtown area was paved, you know, and the convent was very imposing and huge, yes, and all the trees and the I don't remember. It seemed like there were gravel roads out the Houston Highway. I think that was all gravel as near as I remember, but the downtown area. And we drove into the downtown area, and there was Old Manhattan Cafe. And we ate there, and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had been crying because I didn't want to go to the convent. I had a aunt that she just knew I was going to the dogs, the devil, and everything else out on the ranch there. And so I had been putting up quite a howl, and she told me, well, they're going to put you in the basement and keep you in the basement and all that, where you, they're going to fix you, says you're just too mean and all this stuff. And good, I was scared of my own shadow. I don't know how I could have been too mean. Anyhow, and I remember to this day, you remember Cecile Morris?
No.
Leopold Morris's.
Leopold Morris's, yeah.
One of his daughters. Okay. She was in there eating spaghetti, and well, Cecile, you know, is maybe wasn't her sister Virginia was real smart, but Cecile wasn't maybe the smartest gal in the West. But she would string these spaghetti up and look at me, and I was sitting over there. I was so mad at her because I had tears running down my face because I was going to this here terrible place where they were going to lock me in. And then, of course, when I got there, well, they had this lovely fish pond around the statue of the Blessed Virgin right in the courtyard there, and one of the sisters took me, and she'd put her hand down in there, those goldfish, and and then she got the girls all to come running over, and we did this and that and something else. It was just heaven. It was just wonderful, you know. And being a boarder, man, that was the cat's berries, because we all had this one big room.
Was it dormitory style?
Oh, yes, dormitory style and all that. It was just really.
Y'all had a whole bunch of different beds?
Yeah, oh, yes.
You didn't have separate rooms?
No. Just the rich girls had separate rooms. But oddly enough, those of us that were used to the dormitory never did want to have a private room, as they called it, because we had more fun this other way. If we got $5 a month allowance. That was to buy paper and any kind of, and go to a picture show maybe once a month or something if they could find it.
What was the routine like on a daily basis that you would do?
We got up and we went to 6 o'clock mass every day, and then we'd go and have breakfast, which was, seems to me it was bread and molasses, if I remember right, and kind of a milky coffee for those that wanted it, and then the classes started. Seemed like it was 8 o'clock or something. We had some strict teachers. And then at night, I believe we ate it.
And you'd have lunch and then...
And then I think in the afternoon we had some more bread and molasses. Okay. They'd get the bread from Zucker's. You remember Zucker's Bakery over there, Catty Corner over there? Well, they made this kind of a long, tough bread, and it just a kind of... And then put molasses on it, and it'd hang together forever. It wouldn't break up. And then we'd have what we call supper. And then at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 9, we studied every night. We had study hall. Study hall.
Y'all didn't have a recess or play in the afternoon?
Well, yes. After school was out at 3 or 3:30 or whenever it was, we had, we could go swing and play and what have you and all this. And
softball or baseball or was it?
No, we didn't have any have much in the line of games. We played the hopscotch and jacks. I don't even remember how you play jacks anymore.
Did you get along pretty well with the girls? Were you?
Oh yes, we had a lot of fun. It seemed like there was, and then of course we had a lot of studying to do. But I think it was just a wonderful time. Of course, it is looking at things nowadays. It was just. I don't know. I guess the kids nowadays are thinking it's so dumb because we just didn't have that much to do. Our biggest entertainment was when I got a little older, is looking over the back fence at the altar boys. It's behind St. Mary's, you know. And Monsignor...
I don't think things have changed all that.
No. Well, Monsignor, Sheehan had a housekeeper called Miss Louisa, and whenever we'd see Miss Louisa come out the front door, and a little bit the doorbell at the convent would ring, and here comes Sister Burke was clapping her hands. Girls, when we knew we were in trouble, we'd go up, get our ear chewed a little bit for looking over the fence. And then Sunday, one of the sisters would take us walking 2 by 2. There were about 40 some odd of us, I think.
Wow.
Oh, we'd go down. One of the girls was going with Claude Riley at that time, where they were making eyes at each other. They finally married. But anyhow, we'd go down Santa Rosa, buck up, that was paved, down to the railroad station, then back up, and maybe home. It'd be about an hour's walk. And Sister would walk behind us, and we weren't supposed to look right nor left, you know. And of course,
a whole procession.
yeah, of course, our eyes were. And then the few more adventurous boys around town that had some kind of an old jalopy, they'd all pile in that, and they'd go up and down, you know, and we weren't supposed to look at them and encourage them, you know, but of course everybody was peeking out of the corner of their eyes at the boys.
Did y'all wear uniforms the same way that?
No, we didn't. Whatever we had. At first they talked about uniforms, but we never did. I think they wear uniforms now, and I think it's nice. Everybody's about more or less the same class, but I think it's nice.
Well, so all right. So did you go home for Christmases? Was that?
Yes,
was that
and
your,
by that time my daddy had remarried, and there weren't any children from this union. I had a stepmother then, and at Christmas we usually would go up to Houston to the old Rice Hotel and stay about a week. And oh, that was quite. I can hear him yet in the bathroom. He loved that great big old tub because, you know, he didn't have bathroom and all those things out on the ranch then. And I could hear him in there sound like a whale, just having him a ball in that big old tub of hot water. And then we'd go to the picture show. And they had instead of just a picture show, there'd be a vaudeville in between, a whole lot of live acts.
were these silents or talkies? By the way?
No, they were silent.
Okay.
And then in the 30s.
Do you have vivid memories of the picture show? Was this a big deal?
No, I remember the acts more than anything. I think we were more entertained by them than we were by the picture show. And then later, of course, we got talkies, and still the vaudeville acts were in between.
How neat! So they had they were beautiful theaters at that time.
Oh,
this
yeah.
wasn't not just
that
like
was.
we see now. They were just.
They were really elaborate, you know, and that was the main, one of the big things about going up to Houston, you know, and then we'd always eat at some real fancy restaurant, you know, and of course they had finger bowls and all those things too, you know, and I can see my daddy yet kind of wiping his mouth in that finger bowl, you know, and using his napkin to wipe his mouth off. He loved to go and do something like this. And
Houston was very elegant. Right in
the Rice Hotel was the place to go. You didn't.
Presidents stayed there. I mean, it was just amazing.
Well, when we were married, Dennis, we went up there, and I believe somewhere I've got the receipt. It was $3.50 a night. Of course, there weren't many dollars running around then either, you know.
Yeah.
But
well, all right. So now this was pretty much routine. How did you get along? Did your stepmother at all? Was she able to fulfill that mother role for?
No, she. There was no way she could. She just could not. I would have been in some kind of a rehab institution to figure out what I was all knotted up about if they had something in those days. She was incapable of giving anyone. I feel sorry for her.
Bless her heart.
I don't have. Yes, I know. Looking at her own childhood and her own family, I can very well see why it was that way. But we won't get into that.
Well, still, but just again, it was just an interesting point to go along with that, you know, bless her heart, and then we'll just go on.
Yeah.
Now, did you find yourself being, were you interested in boys early? Was it a...
Well, we didn't have TV or anything. I always had my nose in a book. I think I was the most retarded one there. I read the lives of the saints, you know, or history or anything. Just they had what I thought was a huge library. Of course, now it was just a pocket size. I've got more books here than they probably had in the library. But anything that, and I would check out my buy my books in the fall. And they'd see me sitting over there, and when I was reading my history, it was just, everything was just so interesting.
Wow.
So I really never was much about getting off in the corner and talking boys. That's what I say, I was retarded.
Well, did you have what did you know? There are a lot of girls that might fall under the spell of taking a religious life. Did you ever come?
Oh, yes, we all did. Oh, yes, ever so often.
Be a fantasy.
Well, on Sunday we went to 6 o'clock Mass and we went to 10 o'clock Mass. And in the evening we had Rosary and Benediction. And then we would have, about twice a year, we'd have what they call a mission, 2-week mission, you know, and come in and hellfire and thunder and all that, you know. They don't do that anymore, but we all thought we were all going to hell, you know, and by that time we'd all get religious vocations and fixing to be sisters. But thank goodness we didn't, because they would have had a whole pile of us in there, but then we'd forget about this. But these were, I guess looking back, compared to now, very innocent times, because, on TV today, every day there's how many sexual scenes in all these various soap operas that I think the children today are probably pressured too much. I don't know. I never even dreamt about meeting anyone, or and of course, and some of us on the ranch, we just didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a whole bleak time.
So when you got into your late teenagehood, was Joe the first person you dated?
Jim?
Jim, rather?
Yes.
All right, tell me the situation of how y'all met.
Well, I had come up here that Christmas to be with Gillies, and Grandpa Gilly was shucking corn down, and he says, "Come help me shuck corn." So, man, I'd do anything to keep busy, and I went down there shucking corn. And we heard this car drive up out there, and I went over to look out that barn window, and he says, "Oh, that's Jim." And
had he known him? Was it?
Oh, yeah, they were good friends. They were good friends. So I didn't think too much of it, and then he asked me to go to a show or something, and man, I flipped, you know. And he was 11 years older than I was. I think he flipped too, anyhow. But he started coming down the ranch to see me, and my stepmother was very unhappy about it, because I don't know what her problem was. Even on the day of the wedding, it rained and rained and rained, and she kept saying, "He's not going to be here. He's not coming. He's not coming."
Well, you know, often people who are disappointed in their own lives project disappointment.
I think so. I heard, just a few years ago, that she had, someone was going to marry and ran off with somebody else at the last minute. I had never heard that tale before.
Uh-huh.
And I always wondered why she hated this particular family so much, and the man particularly, and that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things.
Well, how did he propose? What do you? I mean, so what was the shock to you? What was the
He says, I'm going to take you home with me this fall. Oh boy! And after we started going together, he taught me to drive. See, I didn't know how to drive or anything. He taught me how to drive a car, and well, he, like I said,
but he treated you more as an equal than.
I had never been treated like that before, and his folks were just, I'll never forget them. You thought I was the most wonderful thing. We had to live with them, because there was no way that we could. He was helping his daddy farm, or they were farming together, and his mother and daddy came running out to meet us when we came from Houston and hugged me, and and I think back, you know, that was the last thing in the world she needed, was a daughter-in-law in the house. But if she ever had any misgivings about it, she never let me know. She was
What a
just,
blessing.
it was just like I always said, it was just like coming out of a cave into the sunlight.
How
And then
wonderful.
we had all these kids, you know, and it was just, I had so much fun with the little devils. They were just so cute and fat, you know, and
All right, now let's take it a little step at a time. Okay, now so you get married. What
mhm.
day? What do you remember what was the day you were married?
The 27th, the 26th of September, 1933.
33. All
Uh-huh.
right, so this
Because Jim's
right.
birthday was the next day, the 27th.
All right, and what was Jim doing at the time?
He was farming here with his daddy.
All right, so and so did the depression really had it affected y'all?
Oh, there just wasn't any money anywhere, Dennis. I don't think anyone will ever realize, and I hope they don't, what the Depression was. Families were two or three in a house together, and a lot of the Spanish families down on the Warden Ranch lived in palmetto shacks. You remember out of that, and there just wasn't any money. We milked cows and sold butter and eggs and raised everything, canned everything under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
We never went hungry. We always ate. Looking back, we ate, for the times, we ate very well.
But there wasn't any extra. There wasn't any.
There just wasn't any money anywhere, period.
I see.
You didn't think you'd ever have $10. I always said the first 10 years of our married life, we'd go borrow money to plant more cotton, and next year we'd go borrow some money to plant more cotton.
And cotton was not.
Oh, shoot.
Well, did you have? All right. So where'd y'all spend your honeymoon?
We went to Houston
Okay.
for 2 days.
All right, and stayed in the Rice Hotel.
Stayed no right.
Where you had your honeymoon. Huh?
And Bear had
Did you
just
check
come
into
back.
The honeymoon suite was it?
Oh, shoot, no, honey. 350, you know it wasn't the honeymoon suite. Remember, it had a fan up there, and going. It's September. It's hotter as heck, and that old fan would go whoop, 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 whoop. It was real hot. And Bear had just come back, and I had my first glass of beer that I'd ever tasted in my life. A little glass like that. It's called Rheingold. I don't know whether you ever heard of Rheingold or not.
Rheingold girl.
And then we thought we'd splurge, and we went in this fancy restaurant, and they had a big, huge tomato stuffed with shrimp, and guess what it cost us? 40 cents.
Wow.
Yeah, you couldn't even buy a cup of coffee for 40 cents now, but that I always remember that in that little nickel glass of Rheingold. That was really...
So after the honeymoon, you went back to his place, right? That was
here, this house.
Yeah.
Came to this house.
To this house.
And that's where his father and mother came running out to meet us out there.
That's so wonderful.
And when this house was finally sold, we bought it. Hurricane in 40 tore it up pretty bad, and it had been sold to Frenchie Jurina in town. You remember Frenchie Jurina? They had a beauty parlor on Main Street, I think.
Okay.
And he had bought this place, and he collected the insurance and sold it to us, and there was one window left in it after that hurricane. So we bought what's called peanuts, but we didn't think it was peanuts. $1,350 for the house and 2¼ acres. Sounds ridiculous now, doesn't it? But
still, I'm sure that was a lot of money.
It was.
All right. Well, now, so your first couple of years of marriage, how long was it before your first child came?
Let's see. We were married in September and came the following August.
Following August. What was your child? What was that?
Jimmy.
How was the childbirth? Your first?
Oh, here at home, naturally.
All right, so was it here? Did you have a midwife, or did you?
No, Dr. Shields, Dr. Al Shields' his father came out, and let's see, I had 3 at home.
How was the pregnancy? Your first pregnancy? What did you think about as a young?
I just thought my mother-in-law was so supportive and everything. I just thought it was, just a ball.
Were you a pretty good mother? I mean, I don't mean good mother. What I meant is, was your body responsive to pregnancy? I mean,
oh yeah. Evidently, I had 8 of them.
So it was a comfortable pregnancy.
Yes.
And what was the child's name?
Jimmy.
Jimmy. So this is Jimmy.
Jimmy, and then Frank.
Can you remember your first impression of Jimmy as you Can you remember
They held him. There was a wind from the west, and they held him up in that. He was born about 6 o'clock, and that sun shone on him, and he just looked like a little golden outfit. But I thought they were all just the cutest things. They were all little fat butterballs, and the first three were born at home.
Okay, so tell me the names of the first three.
Jim, Frank, and John.
Okay, and what was Frank named after?
He was named after Jim's father, Frank.
Okay. And John?
John was named after my grandfather. His name was John Culver. And then came Marianne. She was born at the hospital. That's the first one at the hospital.
Okay, so the first three were born at home. So you had three little boys running around.
Yeah,
What was it like around?
Oh, it was lively. It was lively. Of course, there wasn't much heat in the house. You know, you'd step on the floor, and I think there's more wind came through the cracks in the floor, and that old linoleum would set up like that. You'd step on the linoleum and pile it down on the floor. You know, they had to wear little long handles and little long coveralls, and had little rubber boots for them, and they'd follow their daddy everywhere.
And what did he? So as he went out to do the farming in this, they just were tag along.
Oh yeah, they would tag along everywhere he went.
Did they romp around and climb trees and?
Oh, they were into everything, everything. And the little girl, when she came along, well, she thought she was a boy too, so she.
Marianne.
She was a real tomboy. She thought she was a boy too, and
How
that.
did boys treat her?
Oh, they thought she was special, you know. And she was. She was a rotten little dog. She got a little rubber doll for Christmas, and they got little toy pistols from, I believe that store was Jack's up there on, I think they were about 15 cents a piece, something like that. And they got little toy pistols, and that was the maddest little Dutchman you ever saw. She went marching out that front door and threw that rubber doll as far as it could go, and it went down on the ground, went bonk. Someone in town that we took butter to their kid had a tricycle, and somebody backed over it, and so Jim brought it out here and fixed it up, you know, and we managed to scrounge and found another one that someone had discarded in the trash. So we had two, and he painted them one night and took a little Kraft cheese box and fastened it onto the handlebars, and that's how we did Christmas, because there just wasn't any money, like I said, anywhere.
All right. Well, what was an evening like? Okay. So what did you do while Jim was out?
Well, he was milking cows.
What were your?
Oh,
what was a daily?
I had a garden. I made a garden, and I had chickens and.
And you work with your mother-in-law and your.
Well, but my mother-in-law had died when Frank was shortly after Frank was born.
So you became the woman of the house.
Yes. And his father was here, and we all just real good, real.
So
fun.
did you manage the cooking, and this was you managed the meals?
Yes, and the garden, and.
Would you get everybody up up early in the morning?
No, when the kids go to school, of course, when they were little, I let them stay as long as they wanted. But when they went to school, they had to get their little lunch boxes and walk up to 446 up the road to catch the school bus. We were able to pay the school bus to take them to St. Joe's. And then, of course, you paid at St. Joe's, too. It wasn't so much. I think it was a couple of $3 or something like that. But it was a lot for that time. And then finally, they dropped Marianne off at the convent when she got big enough for school and all that.
Okay. And that was and that was, so you'd get them up, and then you'd work on the garden. And
I sewed. I made their little shirts out of feed sacks. Whenever we'd buy feed in town, you know, we'd. Like poor old Harpin used to say down at the farmer's co-op, he'd say, some old hen always wants the sack right on the bottom of the pile to match a sack she already has. Well, that was the truth, because
they had different patterns on the sack.
And made their little shirts and their little short undershirts and all that stuff, and I did an awful lot of canning.
Did you hand sew or did you have a machine?
No, I had a machine, and I sewed everything under the sun for 'em.
And then and then you would cook. What was all the regular meals? Would you have your own meat out here? I mean, did you?
We had a system of having fried chicken almost all year long. We had about 5 or 6 little coops that we had a light bulb in. By that time, we had electricity. Light bulb in and hardware cloth floor. And you could go down to the co-op and buy some about 2 weeks old, what they called game chickens. They were easier. They didn't die as easily as other chickens did. And so every 2 weeks I'd go down and get 25 more chickens and put in one of these coops. And so we had fried chicken. And we were quite popular with the kids in town because we had fried chicken all year long. And
did this become kind of a meeting place that the boys?
All the kids in town were. This was the place to come. Right recently, one of them told me that he said he never will forget they used to ride out here on their bicycles, and I wouldn't let them go back home unless they had something to eat, and says I'd make them a cackleberry sandwich. And I said, I'd forgotten all about cackleberry sandwich. That was egg sandwich, fry them an egg and make them a sandwich before they go. I had never, I had forgotten about cackleberries.
They would play out here, so this became a real.
This was the place to come. We go down Old Dry Creek is for Aloe Field used it as a sewage disposal, but the sand was just lovely. They'd go down there and play. We had an old horse called Prince, and they'd all line up, all 4 of my oldest ones. You'd see them on. I don't know how that horse ever when he'd get tired of them, he'd go under a Wasatch limb and shove them all off. But they'd spend half a day going down there, tripping through the grass bars barefooted, and try to get him in that little cow trail so they could get on him. And they'd pull up on his tail, and they'd finally get Marianne on the tail end, all 4 of them. I can see them yet. And like I said, when you get tired of it.
Oh, how funny!
And
so they were growing up around, and who was the next child to come?
4 years. I don't know. I forget the length of time between. Oh, Marianne was already in school, and then here comes Susie and Joe and Tom and Willie.
Okay.
I don't know how we.
After each other.
But all of them about 2 years apart, except that space in between Susie and Marianne.
Okay.
So,
well, how was health in general on this? I mean, the economy was now beginning to pick up. I mean, we're getting started to get
well, we had
into the 1930s.
By that we had bought the house in the early 40s. The hurricane had tore it up, and
what did y'all do in the evenings during those times? What would you do with all the
lessons, honey? And then after that. Whenever they got too ornery and I couldn't stand them anymore, I'd say, whose turn is it to dry dishes? And that'd clear the house. Man, they wouldn't be a soul. You wouldn't hear them for 3 hours. I think they'd crawl under the house and they under the house to keep. You have to be kind of sneaky, a sneaky snake to get a little peace and quiet.
You bet.
There was one kid from town. He was so much bigger than ours. And his mother'd bring him out here and 4 others and leave him, and she never know when to come after him. And that big one would always tease my little ones. And finally, he grew up and he quit teasing them. But you just feel like swatting them sometimes. But they all grow up and turn out to be pretty good. We were fortunate about our health. We didn't have any. Of course, you didn't have any insurance or any of those things.
Sure. And so you were how did your relationship with Jim, how was that?
Oh, it was marvelous. It was just, we didn't have anything to fight about. We didn't have any money, and time we got the kids settled down, well, you were just glad to have a little peace and quiet, and so you just never did. It seems funny looking back at it that I can't remember any big arguments that we ever had or blow-ups, and they say a healthy marriage needs those things. But he was 11 years older than I was, and he was very
y'all were partners. Y'all had
Hmm.
y'all had a love for each other.
Well, when he finally got employment, when he finally quit, went to work for the highway department, he always gave me his check when he came in. The check would be for 2 weeks. It'd be one time he had one for $48 for 2 weeks. Man, we thought we were in tall cotton then, but usually around 30 something. And he'd give me the check, and it's up to me to stretch it one way or another. And of course, that was in the days when you could buy little pants for 75 cents and little shoes for 50, little tennis shoes. But way back there, we needed some tires one year, and we had a little running account at Sears. This must have been in the early 40s or somewhere in there, and a little Christmas account with Sears. We'd get them a few things for Christmas on that charge account, and we were scared to death of charge accounts because you didn't know where the money was ever coming to pay from. So well, this was a big item. We need 4 tires for the car, and they were approximately $100, and the carrying charges were somewhere between 25 and 30. I forgot the exact amount.
Wow, that's a fortune.
And I think that was the biggest eye opener that I ever had in managing the money, because I decided then that if we ever bought anything, we were going to buy it for cash. So I started tucking $5 a month away, which just sounds ridiculous now. But for the small amount, and then as, well, when you went to work for the oil company over here, I had more little savings accounts. They'd come out of the Golden Passbook and this and that, and I'd tuck a little bit and never take it out. And it was amazing. Oh, this is skipping way ahead, but it was amazing how, when the interest went up so high, how all these little accounts had multiplied. And they came out one day, Becky Thomas and another guy from the bank and trust came out and wanted to know if we didn't want to consolidate those. Did we know what we had? I said, I had no idea. And it shocked the socks off of me. But just this little amount. But I think that was good for me to realize that the darn carrying charges were about 1/3 of the cost of the tire, 1/3 more of the cost of the tires.
Wow.
So after that, whenever that's how we started the bakery business, is on
Well, all right,
cash.
let's get to the beginning of that. So the beginning
Okay.
of the, what was your idea? I understand it had something to do with St. Joe and the.
I didn't have any idea at all of starting a bakery business. We didn't have a cafeteria or anything out there, and we were all trying to raise money. We were making sandwiches, tuna fish sandwiches and stuff like that. And the kids would try to raise a little money for their senior prom dance, and I'd make them a cake. And one of my first doll cakes, I think they raised $30 or $40 on it. Oh, about each one of the kids buying a nickel chance or something, and that really went over big. So I was making doll cakes for Mary Ann and Susie down at the convent. And then, of course, the convent was having bingos every week, and they won a cake, And I didn't think too much of it. I was buying this stuff on the grocery bill. And one day, one of the kids won a cake. It's the only time we ever won a cake, I've ever won a cake. And it was so badly burnt. And on the bottom was the name of a very good cook. And I just said, she had a big family too. And I said, oh, those kids whopped that up. But that was another thing kind of opened my eyes. I thought, well, if I'm going to donate one, I'm going to donate the best cake I can. And by that time, Jim had developed skin cancers, and he was going up to San Antonio once or twice a year to doctor up there. And they had a little demonstration down at Cress's, and I had seen this in the paper, so I walked down to Cress's. And
that was a little department store at that time, wasn't it?
Well, it's like Woolworth's.
Yeah, okay.
And they had little old plastic tips, and I watched them make roses and things. And I taught myself to decorate. So I started decorating cakes and donating them. And then people started asking me to bake them a cake. oh, this is a great deal, you know, because the biggest thing was all these little hidden expenses we had every month. The kids needed this, they had that, and need some kind of paper. It was probably just a small amount, but all these little small amounts hurt that little bitty check. So this was fine. This was a little extra spending money, and
so necessity is the mother of invention.
Like the bread cast on the water comes back tenfold. Well, it sure did. And then we.
What did Jim think about you doing these little like?
Oh, he always helped me whatever he could. We'd go to Sears and get the big refrigerator boxes, put them in the trunk of the car and haul them out here. And on his day off, he had one day off a week, he would cut the boards to the sizes that I'm going to need that week and wrap them with freezer paper. And so that got to be more and more of a thing. And then
what was that for? What was the
to put the cake.
Oh, okay.
Put the cakes on. See.
Gotcha.
And we still weren't able to get boxes. And then finally, we were able to. A salesman finally started coming to see us, and we bought a mixer, a little small mixer like that.
You call them drummers in that day?
No, that was way back when we were on the range. Those were drummers.
Okay. Well, all right. So they have. Did it begin to dawn on you that might be a business here? Did you begin to get that slow transformation to? No,
not until Jim's company went broke in the '60s. And one day the men had a job and the next day they didn't, period, like that. There was several of them had mental troubles and went into, and oddly enough, the ones that we thought, there was an old bachelor, we thought he was in good shape, you know, he'd save money, and found out he didn't have a thing, and we were helping him, and Jim was helping several of them, because we'd saved up a little money, you know. And man, this was making us feel bad because we didn't know what the heck. We didn't have a job either. And I came home from town one day and I had some orders, and he was baking a cake. And he said, "Well, any damn fool that can read a recipe can bake a cake."
What a motto!
Yeah. And so. We went ahead and bought a blanket oven then and went into the, we were selling enough out here to feed us and, you know, to pay the, so we still had 4 kids in school yet. And that was a heck of a blow. Well, the oil companies now, they give them a golden parachute, but I mean, in that day, except for our savings, we had some in a thrift fund that they had, was a nice little saving. Then I had this here and whatever, but we didn't want to get into that if we could help it because we didn't have any insurance or anything. We didn't. We were lucky that none of the kids were ever sick to speak of, and it just kind of kept on growing. And I think it was in the '70s, I believe, when Tom and Barbara both graduated from A&I down there and came in with us, and of course it's...
Yeah, but the thing is that I knew when I was growing up in McFadden, and this was in the mid-'60s and the '60s, I mean, a Halepaska cake was what you had. I mean, your reputation had begun to spread enormously. That was the thing to have. I mean, if you were going to have a special anniversary, if you're going to have something special, you wanted to get a Halepaska cake. I mean, it wasn't just because we drove right...
They wait... on Mother's Day, we'd usually have around, this was when Jim and I and maybe 1 or 2 helpers, we'd have 100, 125 cakes, and of course we didn't have any room. And when I was in this kitchen here, we did 19 wedding cakes. I'll never forget. We had tables sitting all over this living room, just in this one kitchen here, mind you. I had to make all my roses ahead of time and had them all sitting on shelves to dry, you know, because I didn't have time to make them and put them on the cake like we do now. And then we built this room on. Oh man, we were going to have lots of room. Well, that lasted a year. we found out that was the biggest waste of money. That room cost us about the same amount as the bakery back there did. And then we built that big concrete building on. And when we moved in there, we said, oh, what are we going to do with all this room? Well, hell's bells. Well, we wish we had twice as much now, but...
That's wild. But now there must have been a temptation at the time, or some, I don't mean a temptation, but a feeling that, you know, you might shortcut. Why do this? But you always went to the traditional method, to the let's make sure that we've got to use fresh.
We always use the milk and eggs, and we make our own fillings.
What was what was your decision to do that?
I think one of my friends gave me a piece of advice. I was trying to learn how to do this buttercream frosting that the bakers did, and she says, if we wanted that, we'd go to the bakery. And of course, I was making fillings, and the first one in the world, as far as I knew, they split a cake and put a filling in it. And we cooked our own fillings every day. We made the lemon and the strawberry and the pineapple and so on and so forth.
But you had a commitment to quality. That was one of the first.
I guess that's what really got us started was just. And then what kept us afloat was not going into debt on anything. Whenever we built this room or built the bakery, or even when we built the building in town there, we paid cash for everything. And whenever we needed a truck or anything, and then Tom was so handy. He was like his daddy. Jim could always fix up something that was fixing to fall apart, you know, and make it work. Well, Tom is exceptionally handy that way, buying an old piece of equipment. And there's been a few times when I looked at some of that stuff he bought, and I thought, oh my God, how's he ever going to make it work? But he's real handy with that.
Right.
I'm going to have to go to the bathroom.
Now that we're through the potty break, let's go back to the. Let's go back. You were telling me you have a couple of ranch stories that we want to interject here, so that we'll.
Oh, I think it was interesting. Talk about the way the ranchers did in those days.
This is back in when?
Oh, in the 20s.
Okay.
Usually they came to your house around noon. They were riding through from one ranch to the other or something.
And cowboys?
Yes, or either owners of ranches or foremen of ranches or whatever. And of course the custom in those days was always to hit someone's house around noon and hope you'd be invited in. And if you behaved yourself, or if you were nice from the time before, you were always invited in, whether you were rude or not. And when you drove up, well, you were invited to light and set, which meant light off your horse and set on the thing. And you were invited to have a drink of water, and you got that out of the bucket on the porch with the dipper. And on this same shelf was a wash basin, and you never throw that water out that you didn't drink. You poured it into the wash basin to wash your hands with.
Wow.
And there was also a community towel hanging there that you wiped your hands on. That was part of arranged manners. If there was a rose bush or anything and your hands were real dirty, you dumped the water that's left on that to be sure, because water was hard to come by. It's either pumped by hand or pumped with windmill. And of course, when the wind didn't blow, the windmill didn't pump any water, and water would be scarce, so you never wasted it. And
so you knew that, I mean, the people that lived down in here, and
no, this was down at Bay City, down at Wadsworth, down on the ranch. They always, well, J. Frank Dobie tells a tale that I think is worth repeating. When they were young boys, they had killed the first quail of the fall, and their mother had fixed them for lunch, and their mouth was all watering for those quail. And here comes this guy that they didn't think too much of, because in the past he had eaten everything in sight. So this time he proceeded to eat every quail, and the kids were watching from the doorway. You know, usually kids wait at the second table, and there went the last quail. And he committed the unpardonable thing of telling Ms. Dobie, he says, "Them thar was sure some good quail, but they'd have been a whole lot better, Ms. Dobie, if you'd have browned them first." And his mother held her tongue, but she wanted to hit him with a frying pan, and the kids wanted to kill him. So no matter what was put on the table, it was the best you ever ate. You always complimented the cook if you wanted to get invited back. And also, before you walked in the kitchen, you carefully scraped all the cow manure with your knife off of your boots, because that kitchen was scrubbed every morning. And every day there was a fresh iron white tablecloth put on the table. At our house, I know there was, because I ironed them. And you, whatever was on the table, which was nothing like today's fare, you know, you complimented, said it was the best you ever ate, so you'd get asked back again. So that's kind of the way it was. Right?
Do you remember getting your first phone?
Oh, yes. Well, we had a phone as near as long as I can remember.
Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Now, it certainly wasn't touch tone. I mean, show me how the phone worked.
It was one of those on the wall, you know, and a big old thing, and it had this thing out here, and then you had a handle stuck to your ear.
You had to crank it, didn't you?
Oh, yes, get Bay City.
Tell me what you get, what you do.
Nothing much.
So you'd ring it up and then
keep on ringing. Hope she'd answer, and then you try to, and my daddy always hollered at me whenever he was trying to get hold of somebody. Go put water on the wire, go put water on the wire. I'd have to go outside and take some water and put it on the ground wire. Yeah. And that was supposed to help. I guess it did. Anyhow, there was so many birds on the line between Wadsworth and Bay City, and then Bay City and Wadsworth, that we'd always had a phone as long as I can remember. And I remember the first radio we got, it was Atwater Kent, and it sat on a table. It was about this long and about this tall, and had 4 big car batteries underneath that powered that thing.
I'll be darned.
And I had a little aerial that went from the house out to the big cottonwood tree out there. And I don't remember the thing ever playing very much.
Well, did you like music? Did y'all sing around? You know, was
Are you kidding? Out on the ranch, we didn't do anything.
Oh.
This is Puritan times.
Oh, so it was just real. How did you change that for your children? What was it? What was the difference in?
Oh, they had a lot of love, or I thought, compared to what I had. I don't remember anyone ever putting their arms around me or kissing me or telling me they liked me or loved me. My stepmother was very particular to tell me that, you know, this one or that one didn't. She kept me. Oh well, let's forget.
Well, but you know, but this is really very much your story is not unique here, because a lot of people. This was the way. That was
the way it was. That was the way it was.
People said, "Look, you got to keep a child in line. Don't tell them that they're wonderful."
Oh no, don't tell them that. Oh no, you never did that.
That was the general.
They'd get the smarts or something, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. They'll get too much of themselves. They'll think too much.
That was the way it was. You just you never told them, and you just never complimented them on anything. They never knew. Well, this day when girls hop into bed with somebody all the time, I perhaps think that's not too good for them, that maybe they should do like we did in those days, wait till you're married, because I think perhaps it puts too much pressure on them. I don't know. I don't think they're able to handle it, but this is just my own personal opinion, not exactly religious one way or another, but I think it puts too much. I believe if they could be brought up, but there's all this TV and shows and everything is just, we didn't have any of that, and the books and everything.
It is a changed time, that's for sure.
And they're able to drive at 16. Well, I didn't learn to drive until Jim taught me after we were married.
Was that an easy thing? I mean, sometimes husbands and wives it's very hard.
No, he thought everything I did was wonderful.
Exactly. Do you remember being behind the wheel?
Oh, yes. I think I got it up to 40 miles an hour one time, and I think he had a heart attack because the roads were terrible, you know. He had a little old two-door Chevrolet. He'd sold his cotton crop that year, and he bought that car so he and his folks would have a way to get around. They had a buggy before. They had a Model T, and I think it had collapsed or something. Anyhow, he had bought that car, and so
Did you do any picking? Have you ever picked any cotton?
No.
Or did the boys go out and?
Yes,
and
they
help
picked
with
for the
that?
neighbors and made a little spending money that way, you know, and bought their little school clothes, and they had paper routes, and they worked at filling stations when they were 12 and 13 years old. Jim always thought this was the worst thing that ever came along when they said the kid couldn't work till he's 16. He says by that time he's kind of ashamed to go out and work, but they were rustling all the time, and that was their little spending money.
Now you were pretty far outside of town. I mean.
Oh yes,
not exactly-
7 miles. That was the reason it tickles me every time I think about starting a business. I mean, people driving that far to get a cake, that was quite something. And they didn't have boxes to put them in. They had to put newspaper or sheet in the trunk of their car and put the cake down.
I'll be darned.
And on the day before Mother's Day, they'd be standing in line out here for anybody that didn't pick up their cake, you know. Once in a while, we'd have someone that didn't pick up their cake or something like that. Well, they'd be waiting, and my orders would be way in ahead of Mother's Day. You didn't have this last-minute call wanting a cake because there just wasn't any way they were going to get it.
Right.
uh,
And when did you? And so when you felt, was it a big move to get a store in town? I mean.
Yes, that was. That was. That was mostly Tom and Barbara. Encouraged us to do that. We rented that little old place from Hike there on Rio Grande. He has those 2 places, and he kept going to sell it to us, and every time we'd have enough cash to buy it, he'd go up another 30 or 40,000. So Daddy got his belly full of that, and he said, "We'll just buy us a place and fix it." So that's what we did.
All right.
That was a smart move, but we still sell some stuff out here, not near as much as we used to, of course.
Sure.
But people going by to the valley and to Rockport and whatnot.
And so again, the reputation began to spread, and so and did you help? You were helping Tom and Barbara for a long time, and it was a group, and you were beginning.
We all worked here. Daddy did too until his cancer progressed so far that he would just write the checks and keep books and fix boards, and he had to get out of the baking part of it. They took that over, and now they do all the bossing because we don't need 10 bosses back there.
Was it hard for you to let go?
Yes, it is at times. It's very difficult, but I think, well, somebody's got to, step in. But then again, I'm relieved about the. I used to go nuts trying to schedule the delivery of the wedding cakes and get all this other stuff done, and I wouldn't sleep the night before thinking about it. But they do that so effortlessly, or seems to be. I know it's not. Delivering the stuff, and I love to do the drawings, or some of them. We got a good little girl coming along now that's going to be excellent.
To design, you mean?
Yeah. They bring us a picture or a sketch, or sometimes they don't bring anything. They said a hunter shooting a antelope or Lord only knows what, and you got to go get the encyclopedia and see what the heck this animal is and do it that way.
Oh, neat.
It's been a wonderful. I wouldn't trade being a woman for all tea and China. I hear women think they think we're the women are. When I see these so-called rautious, liberated women, they turn my stomach.
Well, but the thing that I see about you is that you got treated by a man as an equal, as a partner.
Yeah.
And when you are, then you can blossom into what you need to be. You
I had just blossomed like, and then his mother and dad too, after being. Well, they were such caring people. His mother would always go to set up with somebody that had died or help someone who's sick, like they did back in Kansas. The people were down there, if someone was sick or anything, no one paid any attention to them. Like when my mother died, they all went home. No one paid any attention. No one offered to take me home. The aunts, or uncles, or grandmothers. I had both grandmothers. And you think about it now, and you think, well, why didn't they take? Uh-oh, here we go again,
Go
Denny.
right ahead. All right, so we're continuing on, and the business is continuing on, and so we're going on. This is getting fairly close to your 50th wedding anniversary,
Uh-huh.
isn't it? So 50 years, huh? That's pretty.
I thought by it being that much difference in our ages that we'd never make the 50th, but he had a wonderful time, and of course, the next year after that, well, he died. But anyhow.
Well, now, what would you give? Let's say in 150 years or 200 years, one of your great grandchildren is looking at this, and they want to say, what kind of advice would you give them for a happy marriage or an important thing, or some of the qualities that were there with you and Jim?
I don't know. I don't think it's. I think the most important thing is to like the person that you're married to. I mean, like him as a friend, and be able to talk to him about what's going on, and trust each other. I think trust is the most important thing of all. If you can't trust each other, you just might as well forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one reason, perhaps, I think men are still old-fashioned. They like to hop in bed with everybody and everybody. But I think when it comes to marriage, they really want somebody that hasn't been hopping around. And I think that's part of the trust and distrust. It's still well, it's just that way. It's always been that way. And the girls think they have freedom nowadays, and they do. They can do as they please. And of course, they have the pill. They don't have worry about pregnancy, but I think there's more pregnant gals than ever, so I don't know.
About the same percentage, actually.
About the same percentage.
Now, you had I know that this is a little tough for you, but I need to know how you dealt with his illness and Jim's death. Tell me what was going on.
Well, the kids have supported me just wonderful. The one in Denver and the one in San Antonio, but I look up one day and there they were, and it was just wonderful. That John flew in quite a few times, and Frank would drive in, and I'd be back there decorating. He'd walk up behind me, and it just and Tom and Barbara, the whole out, everybody was so supportive of me, and I made up my mind I was just going to stay here and cry it out, and because this is where I was happy, this is where I came as a bride, and it's been a comfort to me. And then, of course, well, like I said, they've been just wonderful.
And how did your mental adjustment? So gradually, the heart does heal. You always carried a special place in your heart, but the mental adjustment began to happen, right?
Well, I decided I had to. I went out to Victoria College and enrolled in some courses, and I still go a couple of times a week out at the university. I'm taking Shakespeare right now. I had to fill up my evenings. I think that was the worst, evenings and weekends. Mm-hmm. And I read a lot. And then I go down to Rockport once a week and take art lessons. And a bunch of old hens like me down there, and we all have lunch together and yak, and that's kind of nice too. And the kids are great about taking me out to eat or planning things for me, or they're really, that's when all 8 of them I wouldn't take a nickel for. I wouldn't. All the hard times I had when they were born and raising them and all that, I wouldn't trade any of that.
Right. So
I always said I wanted a big family, and of course there were a lot of hard times, but it don't seem to me, that, looking back, that they were that bad. They were worth every penny of it, because I was so lonesome, and they had somebody to fight with and love or fight with or whatever.
So and that's how that's how they were able to interact and be able to have some have some good times.
I think big families. Of course, now when it costs a fortune to have a baby, I don't know how in the world they could raise a family like we did, because they just probably couldn't.
And you have your life is fulfilled right now. How old are you today?
I'll be 75 in July.
Okay, and how does life look?
It's really been great. I don't think I'd trade anything. We've had a lot of. I used to always think if we had the hard times financially when you were first married, that you'd have it easier when you're older. And to me, it's working out that way. I have, unless we have some kind of a catastrophe or something, I have enough to keep me in till I croak, as a kid, as I tell the kids.
Do you think? How do you feel about death? Your own death that you would think about in the future?
It doesn't worry me, except except that I would hate to be bedridden or something like that. But of course, we don't have our druthers about what we're going to have. As long as I can.
You have no fear about it.
Nuh-uh, really, I
don't.
don't.
Pass that along to children. You know that there is nothing to fear about.
I don't think there's anything to fear. I've had a very happy life, and like I said, just one man in my entire life, and that was it. I can't imagine. I think Liz Carpenter, Lady Bird's secretary, lost her husband, and she said friends told her to have an affair or this or that, and she says, when you're married as a virgin, it says you can't imagine yourself ever having a dozen affairs or something like that. She finally moved to Austin from her husband had died suddenly from Washington D.C. and I guess she's had a pretty good life too. But I'm happy. I get lonesome, but I'm happy.
Mm-hmm. And we're traveling. And now, how much of you is your creative spirit? I mean, I see a lot of creativity in your work and that. And when you began doing the roses and began making this, how much of you is your creative?
I like that best. Of course, always liked the decorating better than I did the baking end, even when I was doing all the baking myself. And I love to have a challenge go back in the bakery and have a challenge to do something unusual that I haven't done. I have several customers that are always wanting something different, you know, and I get quite a bang out of doing that, something different.
Well, were you creative as a child? Do you remember drawing, or do you remember?
Yeah, I was always sketching or drawing on my textbooks. I find some of the old textbooks where I was sketching on the fly leaves, you know. And I have an old reader that belonged to my mother, and also she had sketched in the a very old reader.
So it comes down,
it must be a little sifting down.
What did you do? When did you first decide to get into art? How did this?
Well, I took art lessons at the convent from Sister Cecilia, and she's 90 years old and still going strong. I went to see her right recently, and she's still painting. You know, she's praying for me about my foot. I have arthritis in my foot, and I have to decide whether I'm going to have it operated on or what I'm going to have to do. And she's praying for me, and I said, well, all the sisters praying for me. I'll be all right.
How neat. And she's still painting and
she's still doing China painting and this and that. 90 years old.
How neat.
She's a little old tiny thing shrunk up there, you know, and I hope that I'll be able to percolate around without being a pain in the neck to my kids when I get older and don't have a stroke or something like that. We all hope that, you know, that
sure.
That we can. I enjoy getting in that old car and that old Jeep and scooting around and.
And you have and you're expressing yourself. To express yourself through your art is your essence. This is something for you to.
I love the painting, and I love the like I said, drawings on the cakes.
All right. Well, all right. I tell you what. Let's look at some of this stuff. Okay.
Okay.
And now, go ahead. Let's start.
We had a life class, and we did this. She was a model, and then of course we put a background in the back of it. We did a bunch of pictures from the same model. There was a man and a wife team that did nude modeling for us down at Rockport, and this is the one. This is one of Jim's favorites right here, and.
All right. So you enjoy. What is that scene?
This one right here?
No. What's the background that you put in it?
Oh, it's just a little old lake and a bird and a few little old trees and stuff. Actually, she was standing on a modeling stand,
Right.
holding this copper pot.
How pretty. All right. And what about the next?
This one has always been one of Jim's favorites. It's a little boy and a little girl. There was a little black and white picture in the Houston Post that I made up a scene behind it. They had run to meet each other. They were friends, and he's kind of hanging on to her, and she's hanging on to him.
Young love.
It is. It's so sweet.
Oh, neat.
And this next picture over here is little grandson.
God, the joy in him is just
Now look what that thing did. See, it came on.
there.
Mm-hmm.
The joy that he is expressing is amazing.
Yeah, he's really straining his little old red face putting that ball up in there. Of course, he's a whole lot plumper than that now.
Mm-hmm. How neat.
And
And how long does it take you to do a painting, and what medium?
these are oils. I have a lot of acrylics, though, and I'm very fond of doing children
Mm-hmm.
and flowers. Those are my two favorites. I'm not too fond of scenery, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
of landscapes and stuff like that, but I love to do children. And I
Right.
think all the kids have some pictures.
Did it take you a while in order to feel, in order to be able to have the self-image to enter an art show?
I usually don't bother with them because I've just been too busy with other things, but I did go into this one. I won some prizes some years back when I entered, but I had never gone back until this year. And Shirley LaPlante coaxed me to come on back in, and all three of my entrants won a prize. Of course, there's not a little third prize. These are two little third prizes here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one I did the other day while I was down at Rockport. Usually I can do it in one or two sittings of, and this picture of my mother I did in two things over here.
What did you use it as a model for your mother? Did you have a...
I had a black and white photograph from way back.
It's so soft and so.
Mm-hmm.
And what is this style? The style that you.
Well, that's in the 1900s, 15, 16, or somewhere in there. I think the back of the picture says she was 16 years old, so that was before I was born. Must have been about 1912 or something like that. And she'd got this new hat, apparently, or something, and she was very happy over it.
It's just lovely. She's
Mhm.
just, and so what a neat memory there for your mother. And flowers mean special things to you.
Oh yes, I'm a flower hound. I've got. Whenever the kids want to do something special for me, they all send me flowers because they know that Grandma loves flowers.
Mm-hmm.
This.
Good.
From,
So this is a. How did you come upon this one?
this is a photograph from a picture we took in England at Leeds Castle, and of course I'm on Shakespeare now, and Prince Hal, or Henry V, is one of my favorite characters, and it happened to be that this is where he brought his French bride at Leeds Castle.
Wow.
And it all kind of connects in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a spectacular place with peacocks, and the English roses are stupendous. You just have no idea. They're just masses and masses of them. You can't believe there's that many of them.
That is just gorgeous. And did you love the traveling?
Oh yes, I was with two of my son and daughter-in-law, Frank and his wife, and they're a lot of fun to travel with. He's just full of baloney, you know, and
All right, well, let's continue on around, and tell me about the picture up by the clock, the man with the...
That was from a little photograph out of the paper, and it was a kind of a poignant little photograph. They were experimenting with bringing animals to rest homes, and this old gentleman had tears running down his face. They brought these little animals there to try to help them overcome some of the loneliness.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a particularly poignant picture.
When did you paint that one?
Oh, I did that several years ago. I'm not just right sure, Dennis. I think it's back in the 70s I did that one.
And what about the lovely girl and the...
I did that one right recently. It was a little picture in the paper from bomb-torn Lebanon, and this woman was evacuating a bomb-torn house with her baby and her little
wow.
son.
And it touched you.
I get a lot of inspiration that way from something. And that little scene down on bottom down there is from the Pennsylvania Dutch country. We had been in the Chesapeake Bay area and went up to the Pennsylvania Dutch country. That's beautiful, beautiful country in there. Old settlements, you know.
And so you use, and did you do that from a photograph?
No, that was just from memory.
There's a softness to your style. I mean, it's almost a little impressionistic, you know, where you just got a little bit of...
I love to do the misty stuff, especially on flower pictures.
And these young
That's a couple of the grandkids down at the bay feeding the seagulls. They were jumping up in the air, throwing bread up at the seagulls.
Do you have a favorite? Do you have a personal favorite?
Of the pictures? Oh, I've given most of them away to the children. I have several that they have that...
So do you just paint in art class? Do you paint here?
No, I seldom paint here. I just don't have time. I try to keep myself busy, and I don't really have an art room set up to do it. I just go down there to paint, just to be with other people, and we admire each other's work, you know, kind of pat each other on the back and all that kind of jazz.
Oh, lovely.
Here's a picture of a little old grandson back over here that I don't have framed. I'm going to do him again one of these days. And this is a picture of that old barn down there with my sheep. I kind of did that from memory.
All right. Well, how neat. That pretty tree there. And then...
I've done all the grandkids, but I just don't catch them sometimes, and this is one I haven't caught.
All right. Do you use brushes?
Oh, yeah. And
all brush and
these are all acrylics right here. Some of them are oils.
All right, and how about this one over here with the, do you have all the pictures of the, over here by the pictures on the door?
Right here?
No, up on top.
Oh, that's from the Grand Tetons.
Okay.
We
Who are all the pictures of?
That's my 8 children.
All right. Do you have them?
They're graduating pictures.
On the, so going right down the...
Uh-huh.
Right down the... right. Do you have any sage advice that you'd like to offer children of the future
I think that I think it was said several thousand years ago, the children of today are just are rude to their parents and all this, and people say those things nowadays, but I think on the whole the children are just wonderful. There's a few of them get off on the wrong foot, but in my night classes I had at school, I'd run into these young people that were just marvelous. They were holding down jobs in the daytime and going to school at night, and some of them were married and had kids, and one was a police officer. He'd gotten wounded a couple of times recently in altercations with somebody he was trying to arrest, and one particularly was a secretary. Her mother was going into some kind of a tailspin. Her husband had died suddenly, and this gal was going to hill country every week to try to help pull her mother out. I think the young people on the whole are just they gripe about them, but they're not. Some of them get off on the wrong track with drugs and stuff or whatnot, but they're more done harm against than doing harm. I think they're really great kids.
Well, what about your personal? Looking back over your life, what kind of advice? What are some of the things that you've learned? Some of the real valuable lessons about life or work or honesty or any of the things.
Well, I think you have to trust your partner when you're married, and I think you have to trust your kids. They're not. I remember things that they thought I was. I had a suspicious aunt that's always accusing me of this, that, and something else, you know. And hell, I didn't even know any boys, you know. And I think a lot of times that we parents get too anxious about them and think they're into things that they really are not, and accuse them of these things, and then maybe they really go and do it to show us that as long as we think they're doing it, well, they just show us that they can do it. I think that the kids are wonderful.
All right, so trust is an important.
I think trust is one of the most important things. Of course, you don't have to stick your head in the sand too. You need to kind of be aware of what's going on if possible, but I think trust is the most important thing.
And treating other people, how does that?
I think the main thing is treat them like you'd like to have yourself treated. And try to be aware of other people's feelings. You know, we all kind of tender sometimes. And
does it amaze you, looking back over your life, to have come from from being in that Model T and a dirt road?
Now to the moon.
And all this.
It is amazing, because I remember how wonderful it was to get a washing machine. Of course, we had an old one with a gasoline motor, but to get electricity in the house in the 30s, and to get the first hot water heater, and how wonderful it was to get the first indoor toilet and bathtub, and the kids all helped their daddy make big old concrete tiles, and they put them out for septic tanks. You know, we made our own, and everything was just a big step forward. And we had a cement porch on here. The kids all helped make that, and that was a whole day's work building that cement porch. Everything in the house was just falling apart. It was just a shell is all it was after the hurricane, and they all helped put sheetrock up, and I can see Mary Ann yet up on top of that big old scaffold, painting up on the ceiling and all this. Everybody tugged in and helped, and then we laid tile on the floor, and of course the house rambles from every direction. If we'd have had that little bit of money in one pile and done it right to start with, wouldn't be such a hodgepodge. But they all helped us with everything like that, and took part in everything, and helped make the garden, helped pick the beans, and helped shuck the corn. And then we finally got a freezer, and we put a lot of stuff in the freezer. We didn't do as much canning then, but I remember Jim he was roughnecking, and he would help me pick the beans and get them all put in the jars. And I'd sit there. I had Joe and Susie. They were both little, and I had one in each arm, rocking and watching the timer on the pressure cooker so I could turn it off at the proper time. So the string beans. We were able to eat very, very well, but like I said, we had to do it ourselves. You couldn't buy lettuce and all this fresh stuff, and maybe bananas or apples was about the only fruit you could buy, and of course there weren't any frozen things at all. Then you went to a meat market to buy a quarter's worth of steak. Maybe you got a couple of pounds of round steak for a quarter, but who had the quarter?
Well, you wouldn't go into town every day, you know.
Oh no. And down on the ranch, they salted meat down when they'd butcher a calf or something like that. They'd hack it and saw it and chop it apart, and put it down in a big barrel, and meanwhile they had a tub of salt. And this meat was so thoroughly salted, and then all the little crevices were filled with salt too. And so after a few days, it would start what they call working, the brine, and then you had to unpack all that meat and take the brine and boil off the impurities and skim all that foam off, you know, all the bloody foam and whatnot, and then pack it all back down with some more salt. And the day you cooked it, you boiled it about 4 or 5 hours, and why we didn't eat the pot and throw the meat out, I don't know, but it was just about as edible. But even in the Crusades, you know, salt meat was the only way that they got around was with eating salt meat. So salt meat and sauerkraut and beans and fruit, and there were practically no vegetables in the summer, you know. A few would be lucky to have a little okra down late in the summer, a few something like that, but and then of course as fall you raise cabbage and stuff again, but we didn't have all of salads and all the stuff that we have now.
Sure, it was quite a different time. What would you, when you look forward in your life, what goals do you have? What would you like to do with the rest of your life?
Oh, pretty much as I am now. Take a few classes and keep well, I hope. And I was enjoying walking, but since his foot's acted up, I was going out and walking 1 or 2 miles a day, and I enjoyed that very much. But it's been acting up, so I haven't been able to do that. I miss that, and just have my children and watch them grow up.
What about travel?
I'm going to Amsterdam on the 26th, and I'll be back on the first part of May there sometime. We'll be gone 8 days. We're going with the garden editor out of the Houston Post, Bob Flagg. My daughter's going with me, and Frank and Carolyn went with me to London, and then I'd gone to Spain and Portugal a few years back, and so I enjoyed that.
So you're going to take pictures and travel, and then so you're going to have some more fodder for your painting, right?
Yeah, I hope to keep on very much like I'm doing if I stay well, and I hope I stay well. I try the darndest to not be too much of a pain in the ass to everybody, and I'd like to do a lot of reading. I wish I had enough intelligence to write a book, but I don't think I've got it in me. I've tried jotting down a bunch of stuff from my early, you know, what happened, but pretty much what I've said on here. But there's nothing too much of a book material in that, I don't think.
Well, so there's a lot of neat things to look forward to as far as what you're seeing in your life. Right?
Yeah, and of course, you're amazed, you know, when you look back and think, just medicine, for goodness sakes. When we were married, there was one doctor in Bay City, and of course he was just a general practitioner, and my grandmother had fallen and broken her hip in the 30s, and they hauled her to Bay City, and the hospital was a house. You know, most doctors in those days had a 2-story house or something like that, with a bed or two where they could put, and there was just no chance of setting her hip or anything like that. We knew she was going to die. There wasn't any way that hip could heal like that, and she died in 2 or 3 weeks. And she was 62.
That's amazing. Isn't that amazing?
I think that's one of the most marvelous things of all is the new medicine that's come in this what they can do, putting in all these new joints and all this stuff, and well, the food too. You can go in a supermarket, and my gosh, they got food that a king didn't have back in those days. All this frozen stuff from all around the world, you can eat like better than a king could then.
Exactly.
And of course, we're going to have more. I think one of these days that gasoline will be obsolete. It'll be like, kind of like whale oil. They'll have some other means of getting vehicles around. And
So you're optimistic about the world.
oh yes,
and what that we got a greater, more communicating,
Yeah,
loving world coming.
I hope we have. I think so, and I don't think that all these things they write about kids are being so bad and all of that. There's a few, but you just hear more about it. There were always a few back there, and maybe what the little devils needed was just a little bit more love, or a little more pat on the head, or somebody telling them they did wonderful.
I think so. When you look at how important it would have been in your life, and it was when you got it.
Yeah.
Same with mine. That attention, that
it was. Like I said, I always think about it as being like coming out of a cave. My stepmother was incapable of ever bragging on anyone, and she had so many old wounds herself, old hatreds, or whatever it was, and I think she just knew that my mother was Daddy's first love, and I think that she knew that she was second best or something. And I don't remember him ever giving her that impression, but she just had these, she got her best, biggest thing when she died. She left everything to her brother, and he was a millionaire in his own right. He had got a bunch of gas wells down there, and I've dreamt since then that she told me she was sorry she did that way, that she was just, they valued the ranch that time at $1 million. But like Jim and I said, we had enough to keep us, and we weren't going to sweat over it or worry over it.
It's a little hard.
We pretty well knew that it was going to be that way anyhow, because she had never had, you know, if we sent a kid's graduation, or I always included her or wrote her or told her, but she never replied, so I knew pretty well how it was going to be. And I would have liked to have had some of the things that belonged to my mother, but I've survived without them.
And what you have had as far as the love in your family and in this, not any value you can place on it.
No, I have Nikki and Alta. I have some nice friends, and like I said, I keep busy. We go out to eat occasionally and stuff like that.
All right. Well, would you, to close this for right now, would you just kind of look in and tell your grandchildren and your family that you love them, and just a little hello to them?
Well, one of these days, kids, I won't be here, but I'm going to be warting the tar out of y'all, because I'm going to be looking over your shoulders, and I'm going to be looking after you and praying for you just like I do now. And you know why you don't get into more devilment than you do? I know you're getting into a certain amount of it, because my antenna says so. But it's because Grandma prays for you all the time. And just hang in there. Whenever you get disgusted with school or something, you just hang in there, because it's all going to be worthwhile. And Grandma's up there, and when I'm gone, don't cry for me, because I'm going to be up there just having a big old ball, thinking about what wonderful grandkids I got. And I want you, and the kids too. I love every one of y'all, and I don't know how I'd ever survive without you. I think you're just wonderful. Now what?